Welcome back to another Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a really fascinating chapter that serves as a foundational introduction to political theory. Look, we're going to absolutely dismantle that super cynical view of politics most of us carry around every single day. And as we'll see from the scholars, we're going to discover why politics isn't just a dirty word. It's actually this crucial, completely unavoidable, collective human exercise. By the end of this, you're going to have a totally new lens for viewing the news, your own rights, and, well, society itself. Let's get into it.
So let's start off with a pretty provocative question that actually sits right at the core of our daily lives. What exactly comes to your mind when you hear the word politics? If you're like most people, business owners, students, whoever, you probably don't immediately think of noble public service, right? Like the source text points out, we usually picture politicians jumping ship from one party to another, making all these false promises, or just ruthlessly chasing personal ambition. We see it so much that the phrase playing politics has literally become our shorthand for anyone selfishly manipulating a situation. You know, whether it's a cricket player scheming to stay on the squad, or a coworker who just blindly agrees with the boss to score some easy points.
And because we're constantly bombarded with these conflicting images, it's really no wonder we get frustrated. We see all this self-serving maneuvering, and it makes so many of us just throw our hands up in total despair and say, you know what, I am not interested in politics. I want to stay entirely away from it. It's a huge bummer that politics has become so deeply tied to this idea of just getting what you want by any means necessary, even if it means resorting to scams or crime.
But here is the critical pivot. We can't just escape it. We can't just walk away. Mahatma Gandhi actually had this brilliant, visceral observation about this. He said, "Politics envelops us like the coils of a snake, and there's no other way out but to wrestle with it." I mean, wow, right? It's almost a terrifying image, but it hits the nail right on the head. Literally no society can exist without some form of political organization and collective decision-making.
So if we want to truly understand political theory, we have to contrast that everyday, highly cynical misconception, the idea that politics is just selfish manipulation, against its actual philosophical reality. And that reality is that politics is the necessary engine for a society to even survive. We all have so many different needs and interests. Institutions like our families, our tribes, our governments, they all emerged to help us fulfill those needs. They exist to help us figure out how to live together while actually acknowledging our obligations to one another.
Section 2. The Architects of Society, from Ancient Greece to Modern India.
So how did we figure out what those obligations are? Well, the values baked into documents like the American or Indian constitutions didn't just pop up overnight. They are the result of fierce, centuries-long debates. Think about it. Way back in the 5th century BC, you had Plato and Aristotle actively debating with their students over whether a monarchy or a democracy was the better system. Fast forward a bit, and there's Jean-Jacques Rousseau passionately arguing that freedom is a fundamental right, while Karl Marx comes along and says, hold on, equality is just as crucial as freedom. Then closer to our own era, we have Mahatma Gandhi exploring the concept of genuine freedom, or Swaraj, while Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was vigorously making the case that scheduled castes absolutely must be considered a minority in need of special constitutional protection. And those thinkers, they're exactly why we're exploring this chapter today. What political theory does is take a systematic look at these massive core values, things like freedom, equality, justice, democracy, secularism. It unpacks the arguments of past and present thinkers to clarify what these concepts actually mean in practice. And by doing that, it essentially trains us. It trains us as citizens to think rationally about political issues and actually assess the events happening in our own time without just reacting on pure emotion.
Section 3, Theory in the Modern World, Redefining the Rules. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, wait, haven't we already achieved freedom and democracy? Why are we still studying this stuff today? To answer that, the chapter brings up this beautiful analogy. It compares applying our Constitution to playing a game of chess or cricket. Think about it. As you play, you continuously learn how to interpret the rules, right? And in that process, you discover new, broader meanings of the game itself. Well, our fundamental rights are exactly the same. They're constantly being reinterpreted by courts and governments to deal with brand new circumstances.
Here's a perfect example, straight from the text. So the fundamental right to life is obviously a core democratic concept, but over time, the courts have actually expanded their interpretation of what life means to also include the right to livelihood. Because really, how can you truly have a right to life if you are systematically denied the actual means to earn a living? It perfectly illustrates how political concepts aren't just static words on a page. They are living, breathing things that have to adapt as new societal problems pop up.
And let's face it, our world is changing incredibly fast, bringing entirely new dimensions and threats to our freedom. Global communication networks are amazing because they make it easier for activists to protect forests, sure, but they also allow criminals to network just as easily. Then there's internet commerce. We constantly give up private information online, so how on earth do we protect that? Or think about your inbox. Should anyone be allowed to just send you unsolicited emails? On the flip side of that, should governments be allowed to read private emails to track down terrorists? Even netizens who generally hate government control usually admit that some regulation is needed for security. Political theory is what gives us the framework to actually answer these highly modern, super complex questions.
Section 4, the Socratic method, harmonizing human relationships. To navigate all this modern complexity, the chapter suggests we actually need to dust off an ancient tool for finding the truth, the Socratic method. In ancient Athens, Socrates was considered the wisest man around, specifically because he challenged popularly held beliefs. In Plato's The Republic, we see Socrates using this exact four-step reasoning process. Step 1, state a common belief. For instance, his friend Cephalus said that justice is just speaking the truth and paying your debts. Easy enough, right? Step 2, probe it with reason. Socrates asks, okay, but what if a friend leaves weapons with you, goes totally insane, and then asks for them back? Step 3, reveal the inconsistency. Obviously, it wouldn't be just to arm a madman, even if you technically owe him his weapons. And finally, step 4, the adversary admits their view was flawed. Cephalus had to agree that his original, simple definition of justice just couldn't hold up. And the cool thing is, we can apply this exact same Socratic reasoning to our modern lives today, especially when we look at how we view something like equality. Let's think about a simple cue, like waiting in line at a shop or a doctor's office. We get furious when someone jumps the line, right? Because it completely violates our core belief in equal opportunity. We want everyone treated exactly the same. But at the very same time, we totally and harmoniously accept separate faster counters for the elderly or the disabled. Why is that? Well, because reason tells us that special treatment is sometimes perfectly justified. We've actually just nuanced our own definition of equality without even realizing it. But if we channel our inner Socrates and probe even deeper, we might realize our definition of equality still has some pretty severe blind spots. What about poor day laborers, the folks who are out there cutting stones or lugging bricks for 12 hours a day? They don't even have the money to pay for the goods or the doctor in the first place. They literally cannot afford to stand in that queue that we are so busy defending. When we become sensitive to that reality, we start to realize that a society where basic necessities are completely out of reach for so many people is inherently unfair, regardless of how perfectly orderly the queue is.
And honestly, that brings us to the ultimate purpose of this chapter and of political theory as a whole. It's not about just memorizing rules from a textbook. It's about constantly, relentlessly questioning them. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Examine your own deeply held views on equality, freedom, and justice. Are they really as solid as you think they are? If you were to apply that Socratic test to your own beliefs today, would you find that they need to evolve? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the rules of the game.